Hi everyone, and welcome to the Intel FutureGen session. I'm Sam from National Student Esports, NSE. Intel FutureGen is a leadership program that NSE run, but we also run some content and live streams based around looking at different careers within the games and esports industry. And today I've got a very special guest from Twitch. We are joined by Adam Harris, who is Global Head a brand partnership studio over at Twitch. So, hi Adam, if you'd like to introduce yourself to everyone.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for having me here today. I am Adam Harris. I head up what we call the brand partnership studio within Twitch. It's within the commercial team, and essentially, it's my team's role to help and guide brands on kind of navigating the world of Twitch, navigating the world of gaming, live streaming, and all the interactive stuff that goes around that. And as you guys will know, Twitch. Brands are a really important part of Twitch because it's how a lot of our streamers kind of make a living. So the more brands we can bring into the business to do really cool things, really kind of natural, authentic gaming related things, the better it is for our business, but the better it is, most importantly, for our streamers and for their ability to earn a living. So that's essentially what my team does.
Fantastic. So, what does a kind of the day to day of a brand, global head of the brand partnership studio, look like?
Yeah, so we're growing at quite a rate, which is fortunate. And actually, the pandemic has been a great accelerator of the growth of Twitch in general. So the hours watched and the amount of broadcasters that discovered kind of Twitch as a service in which they can earn a living and kind of broadcast and create their content. So a lot of my time is actually building teams globally. So we've now built out teams in the Americas. So we just obviously Twitch started as a Silicon Valley company, so we've got a team there. But we've just launched in Brazil, which is a massive esports market, as well as in Mexico and Canada. So kind of building out the teams there and making sure we've got the right infrastructure there. In EMEA, we're pretty big in the UK and Germany, but we've just built France, Spain, and Italy teams. So that's really exciting. And obviously, Asia is absolutely massive in Asia Pacific, especially kind of like Korea and Japan in terms of gaming and esports. So we're launching teams there. So a lot of my time is spent kind of launching the teams and providing the team with kind of the education, the information of how to speak to brands about gaming and how to speak to brands about Twitch. And because it's not natural to a lot of brands, the people, the decision makers, are a lot older and therefore not always likely, from our experience, to have the knowledge in which to, or the confidence in which to spend their money and put on brand activation. So a lot of my time is convincing these kind of all kinds of brands on the virtues of working in esports, working in gaming, and generally what kind of communicating via live streaming on Twitch.
Awesome. So I mean, we'll touch on that later on as well, actually, around the type of brands that you work with and maybe some of the challenges you face on speaking to brands who are new to gaming. And obviously, with COVID, gaming and esports has massively the interest in it has massively peaked because it's been able to carry on when traditional sport has stopped. Speaking about traditional sport, kind of, so some of your background is in traditional sport. So do you want to talk us through your route into Twitch and where you are today and the kind of shift in one industry to the next, really?
Yeah. So how far back in time should I go? University days?
I guess we are a university organisation. So if you start off by which university you studied at and what did you study?
Yeah, so I went to King's College London and I graduated, I believe it's 2001 or 2002. I can't quite remember. It's one of those 2 years, but I did business management. Truthfully, at the time, I didn't really have any great direction of what I kind of wanted to do. So this course had a perfect mix of kind of politics and economics that I was really interested in, and so I kind of used that as the base, really. So I left when I left university. I again didn't really have an idea. I knew I did some work experience at Dazed and Confused magazine. So very kind of during my time at King. So they had a very good scheme where they would kind of put work with organizations for work experience. And I managed to get in at Dazed and Confused. And I just fell in love with media, really, just the whole probably relaxed lifestyle. The ability to wear Converse every day for work seemed like a really good perk to me. Not that should be any kind of deciding factor in any career, but and it was just the creativity. And I was working with Rankin, who's a famous photographer, and it just grabbed me. So when I left university, I managed to get onto ITV's graduate scheme, and was there for about a year and a half, and it was just a good grounding in media. But I decided that I loved writing. I started to develop a kind of real natural kind of inclination for copywriting, and I'd write my own blogs and things like that. So I thought, try and find a role where I could do a bit of writing. So I joined Metro, the newspaper, and started working there. And started to actually write advertorials, which are, for those who aren't aware, are kind of commercially driven editorial pieces. And I just found I had a bit of a knack for writing in a way that resonated with an audience about a topic that might be backed by a brand, but was presented in a kind of a bit more kind of entertaining way, or and not so hard sell. And it basically my career evolved from there. I started to kind of figure out that that's what I was particularly good at, was the kind of branded content thing, which at the time wasn't huge. It's not as big as it is now, where you've got brands as content providers themselves. You look at the likes of Red Bull, who are just enormous in that space, and every brand is now a content provider now with the social platforms, but at the time they weren't. And so I was there for a bit of time, and then I actually became quite ill. I got leukemia while I was during the time I was at Metro, and it just changed a lot of my philosophy on life and kind of what I wanted to do, and kind of just my priorities really. And I decided that I wanted to really try and press into something that I was genuinely interested in, which was sports. And it just so happened at that time that my boss at Metro left Metro to start Sport magazine, which no longer exists, sadly, today. But it was at the time the first kind of premium free magazine in London. So it was well before like the London paper, if people remember that, and London Light, which was also kind of free newspaper. And then there was Shortlist. It was before any of those. And it focused on providing sport in a very entertaining way to a commuter audience. That's what its speciality was. And branded content being sport was kind of a leader in that place, in that space of working with brands. There's so many brands in the sporting arena that had messages they wanted to communicate via the power and the passion of sport, that it felt it was a really good kind of fit for me. So I went in there and started to work with brands and work with, we launched like the NBA when that came over to London, the ATP when that came over to London, a whole host of different kind of sports events and clients, working with L'Oreal on football, with lots of kind of cosmetic brands started to get it into the space as well. The odd bit and piece with FIFA, EA and FIFA and some of their propositions, but it was pretty much like events and magazine. And then Talksport bought Sport magazine.
Right.
So then purely by luck ended up in a vast sports organization who had rights to the likes of the Euros and to various other major sporting events, had genuine sport talent on their books, who were broadcasters, and who had far more flexibility in terms of kind of, they had an online presence and an audio presence, as well as now owning a print magazine, to basically enable me to work in digital and kind of various other forms of media to get these branded messages across for brands. So so I was there for quite some time, like 5-6 years or so in the sports space, where working across it was amazing in terms of working in an area you have passion for, but I actually found it was a little bit too much for me because I stopped enjoying sport. So I remember a couple of occasions where I'd watch like Andy Murray in the Australian Open final, like early hours of a Sunday morning, and realize that this is going to affect my working week, and here's this result. I can't just enjoy it.
I mean, what are or were your favorite sports then, before we go to the next step of your career?
So I've always been a massive football fan. So I'm a Spurs season ticket holder. Don't hold that against me, anyone. And always been massively into football. But I literally I'll watch anything. My wife often says, like, if there's sport on, I will. It could be I don't know, some kind of Hungarian Division B game, and I'll still sit there and just love it. I just love the competitiveness. I just love the game. And I stopped loving it while I was working in sport. It's one of the hardest kind of lessons that I learned there, was that it had too much of an implication on my life, and I
Yeah,
stopped
yeah.
enjoying it. I stopped enjoying at the weekend, watching and getting that passion and enjoyment out of sport.
I guess it's hard to switch off, isn't it? If you're doing your 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, and then you're immediately just watching sport all weekend. It feels like you kind of not had a break from the office, I guess.
Yeah, and the big one was I was there during 2008, and England didn't qualify for the Euros, and
Right.
it just had just a monumental effect on kind of the work that was coming in, and just like the revenue and commercial possibilities within the business. It just had this was something that I used to love, and I was like, I couldn't wait for the Euros. And that year, I was like, oh, I'm just dreading it because England weren't there, and it had implications on my life. I couldn't just watch it for the enjoyment of football.
No.
So it was kind of at that point that I decided to try something new, and not in terms of the role, because I went on to do a similar role. I've always kind of headed up creative teams and done branded content wherever I've gone, but I just wanted to move out of sport, having been in it for so long. So I then went to Time Out, so another magazine and online proposition, and the real benefit of going there was it taught me about youth marketing, because it was predominantly aimed at kind of millennials and targeting people going out and this kind of notion of social currency, and with all the social platforms that are emerging, this being the first person to see this person in concert, or this comedian, or go to this new restaurant, and what the kudos and stuff that is attached to that is big. Kind of, it's still big within kind of younger communities, is like being in the know, and kind of if you're not there, you haven't seen it, and you can't, the fear of missing out type thing. So that taught me a lot about actually my role now, far more so probably than the sport world did, interestingly, because that world was A, marketing to youth, and B, it was pretty much all about live events. And what I do now is live digital events. It's working in esports and gaming. It operates live. All the biggest games in esports are all live games. They all happen in real time. They're all changing. However many people on a map or whatever it happens to be, it's all very much live. If you weren't there for the Travis Scott concert, you didn't really get to see it, and all that, on Fortnite and all that kind of stuff. So it really was a good kind of like learning ground for me in terms of live experiences and what people want out of it, and also marketing to a youth audience at the same time. And then someone I worked with, so how I ended up at Twitch was someone I worked with years ago on EA, and when I was kind of promoting FIFA games when they were coming out when I was at TalkSport, approached me about a role at Twitch. Now, I'd heard of Twitch because I've always been kind of a gamer, but I was at that stage, I think I had 2 kids, I've got 3 now, and I became a lapsed gamer. So I had a PlayStation that was gathering dust. I never got into PC gaming because I'm a bit too old, and like all these other excuses that kind of I had. So I knew Twitch, but not intimately. And he said, "There's this role going, head up creative team at Twitch. Would you be interested?" So I looked into it, and I saw that Amazon had bought Twitch like a couple of years before for just like under $1 billion. I thought, well, as much like whatever I feel about Amazon, they don't often make mistakes. And all their investments are for strategic reasons and tactical reasons, and that's really kind of the fact that Amazon had backed it was one of the key reasons why I joined, because I thought like it's a risk to leave kind of established companies and go to this new found thing about 5 years ago, but it was a calculated risk. So I went over there, and when I first started working at Twitch, there was a team of 3 of us, and we predominantly for the first 2 years worked with what we call endemic brands. So brands that are endemic to the gaming industry. So working with the EAs or Xboxes or kind of rock stars, or all the publishers, all the kind of peripheral providers, targeting gamers and gaming companies targeting gamers. That's what it was. But what I've seen drastically over the last 5 years is all of a sudden, like in about year 2 or 3, we started to see entertainment brands come onto Twitch and want to speak to gamers, because that there's a natural crossover between movie studios and Netflix and people like that and gaming, as we've seen increasingly now, where they're making kind of shows from Last of Us and Witcher and all this kind of stuff. So they were the first to catch on. And then in the last 2 years, and particularly kind of during COVID, but even before, we started to see brands that you never imagined would even appear kind of in a gaming space. The likes of Kellogg's. We work with Charmin toilet paper. Like, obviously, gamers use toilet paper, or we hope they do. But it was just the fact that these mainstream brands all of a sudden began to realize that gaming is not just kind of massive, but it's a lot of fun. It's highly interactive, and actually, most of the millennials or Gen Z are gamers, even if they don't identify as gamers. They're like something like 90% of Gen Z and 80% of millennials play games regularly.
Yeah.
So, and therefore brands all of a sudden began to realize this is a huge untapped audience, and it's bigger than music and movie industry combined, and all these other kind of amazing statistics. And you start to see these mainstream brands start to partner and do interesting things within gaming. So that's essentially what I've been doing for the last 5 years at Twitch, is kind of slowly working with different types of brands up to today, where we're working with everyone, as I said, from Porsche to Burberry to all kinds of brands are entering in this space. It's really interesting.
Yeah, so there's I guess we'll probably touch on the endemic and non-endemic brands now and the different approaches. So how do you find that switch from, you know, working with endemic brands where the messaging is probably quite clear and they're, you know, they're obviously talking to the audience that they know, and then having to work with these non-endemic brands who need to find their kind of tone of voice within the space and how they speak to that audience?
Yeah, so the endemic brands is an interesting one, because you kind of feel it should be easier for them, but actually it's highly competitive. So the likes of Alienware and kind of Omen, it's a highly competitive space. So they're very much focused on the community aspects of providing engagement and reasons for, and allowing the audience to understand a lot more what the key propositions are around their products or the service they can deliver to gamers. The non-endemic brands have very different challenges depending on who they are, how natural they are to a gaming audience. Like, for example, Netflix is very natural. It's kind of easy crossover. Campbell's soup, not so much, or toilet paper. while again, we know that kind of this audience utilize those products, but there's no natural link through to talk about gaming if you're trying to promote soup. So it's our job to manufacture that link in the most authentic way possible, that the audience understands that why this brand are coming in and what they're doing in the space. And a lot of that time it's around supporting the streamers and supporting the creators in the space, because that's a legitimate element that they can play in, is to actually, we need their advertising revenue to be able to pay the streamers for making the content, and that's a legitimate way for them to come in. And then from there we can start to build on other cultural kind of borrow various cultural artifacts to help them have legitimacy in the space as well. So it's a very different approach.
Awesome. So we'll kind of go into what universities are currently offering their students from an esports and gaming perspective, and how that may benefit them in the future, and especially from your perspective as a potential employer, how that may benefit them. So obviously, university esports in the last 4 or 5 years has grown massively in line with the esports industry. You've got universities offering esports degrees all the way through to the esports and gaming societies on campus, now growing in numbers and members, and then competing in things like, you know, we run the British University Esports Championship. But then they're also developing on-campus facilities as well to help them game, as you mentioned before. But, you know, trying to get involved in PC gaming, you're spending £1,000 to £2,000 on a gaming PC. So universities are investing in that space to help everyone try and play and compete in it. But how important do you think it is that it's supported at that university level? And do you think it will benefit kind of students in their future careers to say, hey, I actually was involved in this esports and gaming society, and here's what I did?
I think it's fundamental. The clear gap that I see when speaking to kind of decision makers is a lack of knowledge about esports, a lack of knowledge about, just because they haven't been brought up with it. The generation that know about it are the university students, and it's going to take time for them to work their way through the system into kind of like Gen Zs are only starting to enter the workforce now. So it's going to take quite a few years, but it's fundamentally important, because by the time they come into the system, then we're going to have a generation of people that truly understand the market. Because at the moment, you've got a lot of ex-sport people who are in esports, and yes, they've got knowledge, but they come from a very kind of sport first approach. And what you're by providing these services to students, you're going to have an esport first, a gaming first generation. And it's going to be crucial to developing the size of the industry and the growth of the industry. And it's only growing, as I said, in terms of the revenue size of gaming in general, but esports being a huge part of that, like bigger than music and movie combined. And I think in North America now it's bigger than movies, music, entertainment, and sports combined.
Yeah. Wow.
So like you could see the market potential there. What we're lacking is the experience of and the knowledge kind of that has made its way through the system. So it's fundamental that I think that and brilliant that these universities are offering the ability to competitively kind of start that journey, which is an important journey in terms of kind of the competitive side and keeping it fresh and the new titles, but also the educational side is really important because we're constantly on the search for experienced people in this space that really know what they're talking to, because there's a lot of brands and people out there who want to get into it, and they need a guiding hand and they need the knowledge. So it's really important.
Awesome. And it is good to see that, you know, some of your kind of traditional degrees like marketing are now doing esport modules at the end of it. So you get your kind of core skill set from the marketing degree, and then you get your specialization within your module as well.
Yeah, and also like you've got to have a look at what esports is not that well understood, but actually if you do look at it, it's done so much right in terms of utilizing the new platforms versus traditional sports, which has done so much wrong. Like you look at the likes of the NFL, like golf, these aging kind of associations that are only now starting to kind of realize that there are digital environments where you can get crowd-like scenarios, and like you look at esports and Dota and kind of anyone that offers a game pass where or battle pass, whatever it is, where you contribute towards the prize pool. Like no other sport does that.
No.
Like it's an amazing step forward. It gives you a stake in the game, even if you're kind of like just a passing fan of that title. It's just a very different way. The broadcast tactics have also been very different, far more accessible than a lot of these sports that are behind paywalls of some sort. Obviously, we've got Activision and the likes who've gone to they've separated away from like Twitch, and it's had audience effect. But generally, the broadcast, the rights, people in sport call it the Wild West because they don't understand it. And I was one of those at the start because I didn't, when I first came in, understand esports, and I know it a lot better now. And you actually see there's a huge amount of virtues. They've done a lot right versus the traditional sports who are now playing extreme catch up to try and kind of build communities.
Yeah,
exactly. Same way that kind of
exactly. And I think you touched on a really good point there around like actually in terms of what esports does right with those brand activations is you can kind of go a lot further than you could do really with traditional sport. It isn't just a logo on a jersey. It can then be so much more on top of that. And I guess that's where kind of Twitch comes in as well. Yeah,
it's the value. And we always talk about in terms of marketing to this audience, it's all about the attention economy. So essentially all these brands, and I work predominantly with brands, so I have to kind of speak with that lens on, are competing for eyeballs and attention. But that has a value, and especially for time poor people and kind of young people whose attention goes from one place to the next. Like gaming is the one place where people spend hours, people spend hours watching it on Twitch and hours playing it in the game themselves. So it's the dominant force in the attention economy. But you can't just steal people's attention. You have to give them something of value for that attention if you're a brand. You can't just go in and kind of, as you say, slap your logo on it and expect the audience who've been dedicated to those games for years. Like you look at League of Legends, where people like World of Warcraft, games like that, people have been dedicated to those titles for years. Well, I played Football Manager for actually 28 years. So I know like that's kind of my game. So you can't just go in and slap the logo on it. It has to provide value. So I think what brands the like of MasterCard are a good example of League of Legends, where they brought their priceless proposition, which is all about unique experiences, into esports and focused on the priceless things they could provide the League of Legends community. Louis Vuitton also did it well in League of Legends, where they, with the skins, and realized that is of value to this community, that they just don't want to come in and give a giant kind of branded box that they could keep the trophy in. That was cool. Yeah, like it's fine. But actually they provided the skins so you could actually kind of bring a bit of glamour and whatever they were about and premium value into the game. So it's all about this value exchange for all the attention that you're trying to grab.
Yeah, fantastic. So we'll slowly close this up now. We're actually going to jump across to the cohort shortly, who are part of our Intel FutureGen leadership program. But I'll kind of finish it off with a final question around leadership, because this is a leadership program. What kind of qualities or a quality do you think is important to be a leader, well, within the industry and maybe just generally as well?
I've always hugely valued autonomy.
Okay.
And because I think we've all grown up in an era where we've got a whole host of skills based on the fact that we've got far more ready access to platforms like YouTube, and so we like YouTube, Twitch, podcasts. We can all do it with the equipment that we've got within our homes now. So we're far more kind of it's a far more DIY mentality, and we are far more skilled than our predecessors were in doing certain things. So I think there's a lot of skills within individuals that you just need to provide direction, but let them have the autonomy to kind of flourish and to express themselves and be creative. Because especially amongst the generations that are used to having all these creative tools, there's an immense amount of creativity in there, immense amount of kind of knowledge. And it should be your job as a leader just to pull that out. That should be the main role, and pull that out and give people autonomy to run with it. So that's what I've always valued. That's what I try and give to my team, and that's what I'm fortunate to work for. I have worked for some great bosses that have just given that to me, and that's why what I enjoy the most. So that's what I would say.
Fantastic. Yeah, I definitely had that one yet. So there you go. A unique answer to that one. So thanks loads, Adam, for joining us for this broadcast. It's been very insightful, and this broadcast, for those who are watching and want to watch it back later, will be available on our Twitch channel as a VOD, and we'll also upload it to our website, nse.gg. You can find it in the Intel FutureGen section of our website. So thanks again, Adam, and thanks everyone for watching, and we're going to go across and speak to our cohort shortly.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Cheers.